Hello everybody, my name is Aiden Jakubik, and for my author analysis, comic book author analysis, I chose the author Frank Miller. That's Frank Miller there. Frank Miller worked as both artist and writer on several different novels. He was very influential in the comic book sphere and worked on many things that we know today. He worked a lot in the superhero genre, and you can see his influence in things like Marvel today, and in comics and movies and things all like that. Some of his notable work is The Dark Knight Returns, Sin City, 300, Deadpool, some other Batman adaptations. He's well known for his unique style of storytelling and his unique style of artwork. He tends to use darker themes in both his images and in his characters. So if we hone in on storytelling first, a good example of his certain style of storytelling is in his character in The Dark Knight Returns, Batman. That is the front panel there. In his version, Batman is an older version of himself. Bruce Wayne is older, and he's coming out of retirement to become Batman once again. And the story focuses much more on corruption, on redemption, justice, and on morally gray characters that don't necessarily have like the cookie cutter superhero that was at this point in time, which he worked mainly in the 80s. And that has carried over, especially in this character. Today, he had a ton of influence on the Batman movies today and on just characters, superhero characters today. Another great example is Daredevil. In his writing of Daredevil, he emphasized a lot more on crime and personal tragedy, especially within that character. Then moving on to art style. His art style definitely reflects his unique storytelling as well, of being darker themes. Here is a panel from one of his notable works, Sin City. All black and white, lots of black, lots of bold differences within it, which matches his grim themes, tones, mood. Another great example, because he doesn't just do black and white. This is from 300. There's pretty much all black and white here, and then he just puts in a little color here, and his imaging is very cinematic type of feel, which makes sense because he's had lots of film adaptations, and that's kind of what his imaging is like. It's very much like you're reading a movie almost. And lots of bold lines, shadows, cinematic panels in both of those. He collaborated with several different illustrators. Though he did illustrate and write, there were certain stories where he would bring in a well-known illustrator so he could focus more on storytelling. Some well-known people that he worked with was Klaus Janson on Daredevil. There he is. And he also worked with David Mazzucchelli on Batman Year One. That is him right there. Their styles, though slightly different from his own, looking at those stories, they don't really seem quite that much different in the imaging department. Moving on, he has had lots of film adaptations from his notable works, some that I've already mentioned. A good example would be Sin City. There is the movie poster for Sin City. Even the poster is similar to his art style, very dark, with a little bit of color sprinkled in. He's also had well-known movie that I talked about already, 300. And again, looking back at his panel, it makes a ton of sense that this was adapted into a movie, because this looks like straight out of a movie, very ahead of its time, matches that very well. He's had some other film influencing, not necessarily it's an adaptation, but the Dark Knight trilogy. He did write The Dark Knight Returns, but he also just had a ton of influence over that entire trilogy, a ton of influence on, I mean, we had the Batman movie that came out just a couple years ago that was also very dark, very grim, a morally gray main character, which possibly, if not for Frank Miller, would not have been a thing, because at that point in time, superheroes just were much more cookie cutter. Yeah, and the reason I chose Frank Miller, well, I love Marvel. Today I love especially the character Batman. I know he's not a part of Marvel, but I loved the Batman movies, and when I found out that The Dark Knight Returns originated as a, or maybe not originated, but was written a long time ago as a comic, I was very interested in. I also love the movie The 300. I didn't realize that he had written that when I chose Frank Miller, but that was a plus as well. Why should you care about Frank Miller? Well, Frank Miller's work has aged incredibly well. I think there's quite a few comics out there that came out around his time that, like, probably not worth reading today, just don't age as well, whereas his work is very reflective of what we're seeing today in media, with lots of people gravitating towards the anti-hero and the people that don't necessarily fit inside the same box that we've been seeing people fit in for main characters. Yeah, and that's all. Thank you.